My name is Adrian Turner,
And I'm Joan Centra.
and we are part of the Wolf Creek Library branch. And together we are reading Maximum Ride Forever by James Patterson, targeted age group teens. And I will be starting off reading Book 1, Chapter 1, that starts off covering the apocalypse. Breathe, Max forced the air in and out. The air was heavy, and the rotten egg stench burned the inside of my nose, but I focused on inhaling and exhaling as I ran. The earth shook violently, and my feet slid over loose rocks as I raced down the slope. Red-hot coals pelted the earth around us as volcanic ash set our hair on fire and ate tiny stinging holes in our clothes. Our backpacks, I yelled, stumbling to a stop. I couldn't believe I had forgotten them. They're all we have left. Tools, knives, the crossbow. We left them in the field, Nudge cried. I shaded my eyes and looked up. The air was thick with spewing magma, ash, and glowing rock, belched up from the deep beneath the earth. I'm going for them. I decided, as the leader of the flock, responsible for everyone's survival. I didn't have much choice. You guys get that rock outcropping by the southern beach. It's the only protection we'll find. You have 5 minutes tops, Warren Gazzy, our 9-year-old explosive expert. This whole part of the island's gonna blow. Right, I said, but I was already sprinting up the hill through the hailstorm of fiery pebbles. I might have flown faster, but I couldn't risk singeing my flight feathers right now. I grabbed the backpacks and raced back. The ground shuddered again, a churning quake this time that felt like it was shifting my organs around. I lost my balance and catapulted forward, the provisions we needed torn from my arms as I face planted hard. Sprawled in the dirt, I focused through the dizziness just in time to see a smoking boulder the size of a refrigerator bouncing toward my head. I tucked my chin and rolled, saying a silent prayer. Then I heard the sound, boom. It was like a rocket had been set off inside my brain. I may have blackened out. I don't know. Shaking my head, I opened my eyes and gasped. The boulder had obliterated the space where I had just been lying. But beyond that, the top of the volcano was now shooting off a 1,000-foot column of liquid fire and smoke. I gasped, mesmerized, as bright orange lava oozed over the cliff we call home for the last 3 months. Then the sky started to rain blazing rocks, big ones, and I snapped back to attention. Crap! I leaped to my feet frantically, grabbing backpacks and scooping up the scattered tools that were all we had left. The ground around me was being covered with hot ash, and as I reached for Gazzy's pack, it went up in flames. I snatched my burned hand back, swearing as the nerves convulsed with pain. Max, hurry! My ears were ringing, but Angel's voice was clear inside my head. Ordinarily, I would be annoyed at being bossed around by a mind-reading 7-year-old, but the terror behind her words made my throat dry up. I looked back at the volcano. Considering the size of the boulders, it was hurling out of its crater. Conditions could be even deadlier farther down the mountain. What was I thinking leaving my family? Forget the tools, I had to run. My mouth filled with the taste of deadly sulfurous gas, and as it tore at my lungs, I wheezed, choked on my own phlegm, while glowing bombs fell out all around me. I stumbled through the ash and rubble, tripping again and again, but I kept going. I had to get back to my flock. Another 100 yards and I would be at the meeting place. Pumping my legs, I took the turn onto the rock outcropping at top speed and sailed toward a river of boiling lava.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. I will read chapter 37. 2 hours later, I felt practically cheerful. That termite mound, once huge, was almost flat. I'd found termite nurseries where I could scoop up handfuls of pupae and wolf them down. Once I'd gotten used to the little feet and antennas tickling my throat, I'd started to appreciate their delicate nutty flavor. Now I lay flat on the ground, my belly full, my body surging to life with nourishment. Yes, the African termite, I murmured sleepily, a bit tart, piquant, slightly reminiscent of quinoa. Oh, get up, Max. You can rest later. You're on a mission. You have to find out if whatever happened here is connected to something bigger. Had anything Nuru and Azizi told me been true, or had they been deceived from the beginning? So before I went to Russia, I journeyed south, figuring that Tanzania's biggest city, Dar es Salaam, should be within a couple hours' flight. And it was, or at least what I assumed was Dar es Salaam. Basically what I found was a city of ashes. A large circular area had been completely razed, with every single building leveled. I didn't see any people, no corpses either. Just shadows where everything had been incinerated, buildings, cars, and citizens all together. Away from the center, a few buildings were still partially standing, mostly the ones made of concrete. I flew to the top of one of them to get a better view, and I saw that its roof tiles had bubbled and blistered. On the next block, a high-rise hotel looked like it had buckled at the knee. The lower floors had collapsed into a pile of rubble, with the untouched penthouse now balancing on top of it. What happened here? I was almost positive it wasn't a natural disaster. It looked more like pictures of Hiroshima after World War II. But who would do this, I wonder aloud? As far as I knew, Tanzania hadn't been any kind of global threat. Why here? The remedy does not discriminate. I whipped around at the sound of a deep voice and almost gasped. A giant of a man stood watching me. I have extra good hearing. How had he gotten so close? Paris, Hong Kong, New York, here, all the world's people must answer for the crimes against Earth. Who are you? I asked sharply. And more important, who is the remedy? I remembered the word from the conversation on Fang's blog. We thought it was a vaccine, maybe for the HAE virus. But this guy talked about it like it was a person or some other kind of entity. Maximum ride, the broad-faced man said, ignoring my questions. You seem to have lost your flock. The remedy doesn't like loose ends. I'm starting to think me and this remedy dude wouldn't really get along. The giant may have been freakishly huge, but he couldn't fly. I started to sprint, but he was amazingly fast, and he batted me back down to the broken tiles with his massive fist, as if I were a fly. I'm stronger than most grown men, and I've been fighting for my life since I was barely able to walk. I'm lethal, and I know it. Now I fell back on the hand-to-hand combat I relied on so many times, dodging and weaving and getting a jab in when I could. But this guy was much stronger than most men, and stronger than me, and my hits didn't seem to faze him. He gave me a hard left to the head, smashing my cheek and whipping my head sideways. The sudden, awful pain made me want to throw up, and my reflexes slowed. Swallowing down bile, I lunged across his right side for a kidney jab, and he caught my neck in a headlock. We stumbled around in a strange waltz as I tore at his arm. The giant flexed his muscles, crushing my windpipe more and more. A euphoric feeling flooded my system as he blistered roof tiles beneath my feet, started to blur, and my legs turned to rubber. My vision went swimming, and it suddenly seemed so easy just to give up. No, with my last bit of breath, I fumbled for a steak knife I tucked into my belt. I chomped down hard, burying the knife into the giant's thigh. He grunted, and his grip slackened a tiny bit, but it was enough. I dropped down, dead weight, and slipped out of his grasp. As he reached to pull out the knife, I seized a shard of broken tile and gouged at his eyes. It was so horrible and gross, but effective. He shrieked and lurched backward, stumbling blindly close to the edge. His huge ham hands covered his eyes, blood running through his fingers. There was a length of broken, rusty rebar sticking up out of the tiles, and I snatched it up and pointed it at his chest. If he lunged forward, he would impale himself, and I would help him. Let's try this again, I snarled. Who is the remedy? The giant began to laugh, his blood running into his mouth. You believe you can escape him? He asked. He laughed and laughed until I was sure that grating sound would live on in my dreams. I have failed, but more will follow, and you cannot escape us all. The horseman will ride on, the man said, and then leap to his death.
Thank you, and this ends our reading of Maximum Rise Forever by James Patterson.